Hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm your host, Connor Rebush. With me, as always, Phil McKenzie. Phil McKenzie and his famous half of one syllable. And it's good to know.
That was at least recognizable as sup.
It really wasn't. I know you think it was. It must have been.
You were a liar.
It sounded. The listeners will confirm, my friend. The listeners will confirm.
I'm not listening to what they have to say. They're not here to tell things. They're here to listen.
Well, that's true. That's probably wise. But anyway, good to know that we are in peak podcasting form for this, because we are coming in hot on the heels of UFC 299, which was, dare I say, very good.
Weird.
Really good, right? I mean, it was just a great night of fights.
Yeah, it's crazy what happens when you book a card full of fighters that are both good and relevant.
Relevant and well matched, as we've just spent the last half an hour complaining and then trying to create like statistical spreadsheets of Apex events. It's not only that the fighters aren't good, it's that when there is a nominally good fighter, they're just weirdly not in well matched fights. This whole card, all the fighters were at least towards the top of the card.
Most of this card was well matched.
Well, you're going to have some prelims. I mean, I'm not going to hold that against them. Basically, everything through.
Do you know what wasn't well matched?
What's that?
The main event.
Well, that's maybe kind of fair, and you were absolutely vindicated for your call on that one. Although we're both going to get to eat some crow this week, because as is the case with well-matched fights, surprises abound, and quite a few of our predictions were in the dead wrong category. Although I'm very pleased to say, I was really surprised. I don't think I realized until after we'd recorded that there was like a feeling in the air that infected many other members of the commentariat that Dustin Poirier was not going to beat Benoit Saint-Denis. And we were pretty like blasé in our confidence in Poirier. We took it as like self-evident, like, hey, he's a better fighter. And then I found out he's a plus.
Yeah, both him and Jailton Almeida were fights where I was pretty blasé in picking the guy that I thought had the obvious style edge, and then I was watching the actual fight playing out and just being like, man.
I will say that the Poirier Saint-Denis beginning didn't surprise me, and actually it did not even put a dent in my confidence that Poirier was still going to win. Because I did say, I was like, he's probably going to have to survive some hairy shit early. Saint-Denis comes super hard, and he's young and fearless and just doesn't care about playing it safe. So even as I was watching that, I was like, yeah, he's not losing. He's just losing the part that he was going to lose. So yeah, that one at least put the least thought probably into that call and nailed it.
Yay.
As for a lot of the rest of the card, understandably difficult to get the predictions right, and a lot of fighters defied our expectations, except for you in the main event when you said, I think Sean O'Malley will rise to the occasion. Boy, did he. I think you've also said in recent times that you think Chito Vera is actually getting worse, and I think you might be right. But yeah, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. I'll just run through it really quick. We're going to do Sean O'Malley, Chito Vera, of course, Poirier Saint-Denis, of course. We have chosen once again to do Petr Yan versus Song Yadong as our segment 3, but we will, I believe, be talking about as many of the other fights as we can. And like last week, there should be a short little bonus episode up on the Patreon if you want to hear our thoughts on fights like MVP Holland and Madalena Burns, which I very much want to talk about. I thought that was a fantastic fight, among others. Blades Almeida, which was funny. Also, before we get in, I suppose we should shout out, feels like the wrong word, but give our thoughts to MMA legend Mark Coleman. We just found out just before recording is in critical condition after smoke inhalation because he rescued both of his parents from a house fire. And from what I've heard, went back in to save the dog and unfortunately passed out. So a genuinely heroic act and a horrible, tragic outcome. I really, really hope Mark Coleman pulls through. Who doesn't like Mark Coleman, man?
Yeah, just incredibly sad, but yeah, as what else can you say? Just genuinely heroic. Yeah, incredibly touching. Like, Mark Coleman has always been one of those guys where you just kind of radiated being a pretty good dude.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's incredibly vindicated, and
that's a family man right there.
All the best for him, and all the best for his family.
Yeah. If you didn't know he was a real family man after he consoled his daughter when she was upset for seeing him get beaten by Fedor, a very touching moment in his MMA career. I mean, that is the definition of a family man and a hero. A word that is often used too lightly, not the case here. All right. Let's talk about some bantamweights. Bantamweights in a main event? Why, I never. Sean O'Malley, Chito Vera 2. Not well matched, you say, Phil? I mean, Sean O'Malley fucking clowned Chito Vera. He really did. I'll say this. Sean O'Malley continues to get better. This was, like most masterclass performances, it was a two-man effort. In order to have a fight turn out like that, one guy has to look really good, and the other guy kind of has to reciprocate by not looking very good. And I think we definitely had a bit of both, but that is to take nothing away from Sean O'Malley, who I think demonstrated throughout that entire 25-minute fight, most of which was contested at a very high pace, that he is actually better than he has ever been before. He has been improving this entire time. He is more disciplined. He has a better feel for the sort of shape and length of the fight. He won rounds without fail, kept Chito Vera under his control the entire time, came closer than anyone ever has to knocking him out. And I just thought it was a super mature performance from Sean O'Malley. I will say, however, as to one part of our expectation, that he would sort of have his hands turn into bags of pulp. The photo immediately after the fight did feature him in a boot and a right hand cast. So he did grievously, injure himself smashing Chito Vera's face. But boy, did he win. I'm now at the point where I no longer care really how annoying Sean O'Malley is. I really enjoy watching him fight. He's very, very good.
Yeah, I mean, this was a genuinely remarkable performance, but there is also a reason why I was like, my sole tweet on UFC 299, which was a great card featuring many moments, was just like me grousing, like being, this is why after Dillashaw and Covington, you don't give people who don't deserve it title shots, because this is what happened.
Well,
a whole bunch of people were like, oh, look at the incredible heart Chito showed. And I was like, I've seen Chito Vera show heart.
We know he's got heart
in every one of his fights.
That was never in doubt.
But it literally did look in this one as though his game plan was to let Sean O'Malley damage himself by hitting Chito as much as possible.
Yeah, he did have, in rewatching it, I was struck, I did not have a clear recollection of how successful he was in round 4. By far his best round of the fight. And that was the one round where he really just seemed to accept the fact that he was going to get hit and just go after Sean O'Malley. And I think at that point in the fight, O'Malley was tiring a bit. He recovered and pulled out an incredible 5th round. It was just as dominant as the 2nd round was for him. So that was impressive too. But yeah, in order to have any success at all, first of all, Chito would have needed Sean not to have learned to deal with low kicks. Sean did deal with low kicks. Particularly from the orthodox stance, I think he checked every single right low kick Marlon Vera threw.
Yep.
There were some people out there saying, why didn't Chito kick that won him the first fight? The only leg kicks he could get in were southpaw when O'Malley was also in southpaw, left kicks, and even those, O'Malley started to get a read on them, and they stopped working about halfway through the fight. The orthodox kicks, he was on them. He has clearly been training this. I know he checked a lot of the kicks in the Pedro Munoz fight, but our point last week was really that in having to worry about those kicks, it neutered a large part of his positional boxing game. He was on point with the boxing and able to defend the vast majority of the kicks that came his way. So that right there just is one testament to how much he has continued to improve and sharpen his skill set. He's serious, man.
Yeah.
He's good.
Yeah, it does feel like we're watching, we were sort of, I was complaining about sort of the lack of generational talent in some of the divisions, but, he's well on his way. Again, I fully expect him to just physically disintegrate, and maybe he won't even fight at this weight class again, but this was a magically good performance. I have to say that, even if it was over. Like, again, this was someone who Chito scraped by Pedro Munoz to get this shot.
Yeah.
Many people did not even think he won that. But still, this was a Holloway Cater-esque dismantling.
Yes.
Of a fighter who at least should prove troublesome, and just didn't.
Nope. The few issues that Chito presented were just things that he seemed to remember from their first fight. I suppose in that way it was a case of the guy who loses the first fight having a better idea of how to adjust for the rematch.
Mm-hmm. But it's also just a case of Chito Vera having
a nonsensical game. A nonsensical game that totally relies on getting hit by his opponent, not getting hurt. That part worked,
Uh-huh.
He took a flush step knee. He took like an Overeem knee to the face in round 2.
Yeah, it was like Evloev against Ige.
Yeah. Oh, Chito ducked into it like that. He brought his face down into a perfectly timed full power knee, and it clearly hurt him, but he didn't actually even stagger. He just had to back off and shell up. Like, he is insane.
I bet that kneecap is going to trouble Sean O'Malley.
I mean, honestly, Sean said he felt something snap. That's what he said after the fight when he landed the knee. I suspect it may have been his own patella. Yeah, he just split his kneecap in two. But seriously, I mean, he ate some crushing right hands. That savage knee. The shot that I actually thought he was referring to initially, because it clearly affected Chito's eye. I thought he broke his orbital. Maybe he did. I haven't seen a medical report yet. But the lead right hand in round 5 that very badly hurt Chito Vera, like somehow hurt him worse than the knee, probably because accumulation of damage.
I think it just blinded him.
Yeah.
I think he was literally just like trying to get his.
I thought it
whatever
hit him.
Happened. He just lost vision in that eye.
Yeah, it could have just hit him directly.
Trying
in the
to
eye.
get back, staggering away, trying to get his vision back.
Yeah, he was blinking for a lot of that round. Maybe it broke his orbital. Maybe it just hit him square in the eye, and is just, had to blink it out for some time. But I mean, so the toughness was there for Chito Vera, as we expected, but he really had no novel ideas of how to take the fight to Sean O'Malley, who is not only better than he was in their first meeting, but also did the work and focused on neutralizing the thing that most troubled him in their first meeting. And without that, Chito was clueless. He was absolutely clueless throughout the entire fight.
Well, I mean, I think Chito's one adaptation was that he told himself, I'm going to start even slower because I've got 5 rounds.
That does seem to be the case, honestly. Yeah. Which is
still, and this is why Chito has annoyed me so much. I do not understand why a man with infinite cardio and infinite durability decides that he's just going to do nothing in his fights.
Yeah, I mean, he's always been a slow starter. I think it is just an aspect of his personality to some extent, but But still, I want to give most of the credit to Sean O'Malley, honestly, because he had a very difficult task in putting the lid on Chito Vera early and maintaining that level of control to make sure that Chito's slow start turned into a almost entirely slow performance. So let's talk about it. I mean, what things did Sean O'Malley do that caught your attention and impressed you here? Any specifics?
Mostly just jabbing and pivoting from either stance, like using the jab like a much longer version of TJ Dillashaw to hide which stance he was in. Mm-hmm. But yeah, mostly just like jabbing and pivoting away, and then like lots of body work.
Loved the body work.
Not necessarily as something even to like tire Chito out, because I don't know if that that's a real thing that you can do. But it just worked as a, like you were saying last week, as a center mass thing to just keep him from moving forward. Just had a constant diet of like keeps and long rights to the body.
Yeah. This was to me more than anything a masterclass in first how to gain and then how to maintain and use an initiative. Mm-hmm. Because when Chito is thinking defensively, he sucks. He holsters both of his hands and tries to like pick off individual shots with his hands. Jason Perillo was begging him to throw when Sean O'Malley was throwing. And he, despite the fact that he could clearly tank anything that hit him, he never actually felt secure enough to not have his weapons holstered and tasked with defending him. Sean was sticking him with the jab. What I really loved, something I haven't seen or at least didn't notice in earlier O'Malley fights, was early when the distance was much longer. He was still sort of gaining his feel for the range. Anytime they would, he also stayed in open stance a lot early. To keep that distance longer and to keep Chito from building on him. And anytime they touched lead hands, he would just boot Vera in the belly with a nasty front kick. Yeah. That was a really, really good, effective strike that landed almost every single time he threw it. So I loved that. There was so many opportunities you could see O'Malley gathering information about the range and then adjusting his attacks accordingly. If he checked a kick, he would almost immediately step in and jab, which is like, yeah, if the guy can touch me with a kick and I stop it, he's close enough to jab. If I can reach out and touch the guy's hand, he's far enough away that I have to go with something like a front kick, a really long range weapon. If I am able to touch him with a jab, then obviously I can drop down and hit him in the body with a straight shot off the backhand. And that's the other thing. Once he had that initiative, once he had Chito just reacting and biting on his feints, he had so many ways of taking advantage of Chito's defensive reactions. The body shots, when you can see every body shot is preceded by him feinting Chito and Chito lifting his left hand to guard against a cross. There's a funny moment early in the fight when he does that. He feints. Chito reaches for the jab and tries to cover high against the right hand. So then he hits him in the body, and then he pressures in with more feints, and Chito seems to suspect the switch up, which is a thing you do. The right hand is landed to the body. Now I'm going to land one to the head. So he covers up high again, and O'Malley just hits him in the body again. Like, there was no safe way to be reactive in front of Sean O'Malley. The only way Chito was going to turn this fight around was to do more of what he did in the fourth round, which is to surge forward, putting strikes together, and make O'Malley react. But he just could not cement an initiative. He was just dancing to O'Malley's rhythm the entire time, with the exception of that fourth round, which was quite back and forth. O'Malley still won it.
Yeah, it's still an O'Malley round. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking in this fight that it becomes, and the Yarn fight as well, I was thinking it becomes, as well, the Yarn first round, I was thinking it becomes really tempting to dismiss earlier fights from fighters in these kind of contexts. Because in the Yarn one, in the first round against Song, we'll talk about this later, he looked pretty terrible. But also Sean O'Malley looked incredible in this fight, and there's a real temptation to just be like, well, did we just overlook this incredible genius fighter because he looks like a dickhead and talks like a dickhead?
Yeah. Though he is sort of casually funny.
It's not true. Like those poor performances against Munoz and Vera, like they were real things that happened.
Yeah.
That first fight against Chito was not like, it wasn't this fight. It wasn't O'Malley smoking Vera and then suddenly his ankle gave out and he fell over.
Yeah, no. His game was badly affected by Chito's game in that fight. He didn't know how to adapt or didn't do it quickly enough.
Mm-hmm. Like, we genuinely are seeing a fighter who has improved massively.
Yeah. Without question. Yeah, that's why I was so thrilled. Like, I don't care how annoying Sean O'Malley is. I will also say he had a couple of interactions this week that did get a chuckle out of me. He is kind of casually funny in an annoying way. Like, he was walking backstage after the fight and Merab approached him and said something, and Sean, I think, actually didn't notice him, and then they walked past. He says, "Oh, I didn't even know who that was," which was like an accidental burn.
Yeah.
He just didn't notice him. And then did you see the thing where Henry Cejudo was trying to talk shit to him during a post-fight interview?
No.
Yeah, very awkward. There was also a wonderful piece of work by the cameraman who caught this interaction because Davison Figueiredo was doing an interview off in the background. And so we got an Office-esque reaction shot of Davison Figueiredo was sort of looking awkward and side-eyeing the two of them. But yeah, Henry Cejudo has this whole like canned Colby Covington type spiel. And Sean O'Malley asked, "Oh, you ready to fight right now? How heavy are you?" Because Henry looked kind of fat. And then he didn't really have any good quips after that. He just kind of let Henry do his thing and leave. And then he was like, "That guy's so annoying." It actually made me laugh. He was sort of just slightly miffed by the interaction and then just sort of put it off. So yeah, but I don't care how annoying Sean O'Malley is. If he's going to fight like this and obviously make huge improvements to his game, there's nothing I love better than seeing a fighter get better.
Yeah. I mean,
and he's gotten so much better. He was already good. He's gotten so much.
Just like a really high pace up. He never got bored with his work.
No. And it was really just a few tools.
Gave Chito anything to dial in on in terms of his predictability. As you said, he was drawing out reactions and punishing them the whole time. And he never really, burnt himself out, you could tell, doing that kind of stuff.
And very mature, because he was really just cycling through a few basic things. Like, Sean O'Malley doesn't really have
it's really easy to just start autopiloting.
Yeah,
he just didn't.
He was locked in.
He didn't tire out physically or mentally.
Yeah, he was locked in, man. He was in predator mode. Like, he was really engaged with the role of just playing this constant game of switch up, using that initiative he grabbed early to just keep Chito reactive the entire fight. Constantly, I'll use a chess term, gaining time with the feints, with the jabs, always creating threats. The knee, too, was like the body shots. He hit the body shot because he saw Chito raising his left arm to stop the right hand upstairs. The knee, he threw a 1-2, and Chito shelled up and hunkered down, tried to get under the right hand, and then he immediately pressured him, quick feint, gaining time, and then threw the knee. Got the same reaction 2 times in a row and crushed Chito, punished him brutally for every single exploitable pattern there was in his defense. anything that was a repeated pattern just allowed him to force Chito to react more. And the more Chito reacted, the more patterns there were to pick up on and punish. Initiative, baby. This was a masterclass in initiative, truly. And it's the kind of fight Chito should lose, with the style he's adopted. Like, this is how you beat him.
Yeah.
But it's not easy.
Yeah. I mean, again, that was the thing that annoyed me, because I was just like, we could have had... Like, I'm thrilled to see this version of Sean O'Malley against Merab or Sandhagen, or even, should it come to it, Ilia Topuria.
I hope they don't do that, though. Enough.
We are watching a sensationally good fighter, and instead, he smoked Chito, and I understand why they booked it, but, like, Chito's he's just not that guy.
Nope.
I mean, as you said, if you're able to be that rangy fighter who can just keep initiative and hold it, that is what is going to happen to Chito Vera.
Yeah.
It's more impressive than it I think anyone would have predicted it being.
Yeah.
I said I thought O'Malley would rise to the occasion. I didn't think he was just going to absolutely smoke Chito for 4.5 rounds.
It was like Dillashaw Barral won.
One brief moment of success.
Yeah, it was like Dillashaw Barral won. Like, the definition of rising to the occasion. He fought perfectly. Which isn't to say there aren't some... I'm not like getting too high on this and saying that there's nothing that you could call a mistake. But none of it was in a context that Chito was able to exploit. Like, you could question some of his resets. You could question some of his defense. As I said, he doesn't really have like a left hook, which would have been really useful. He got so many big reactions to the jab, but he was only ever really looking to use that to line up a right hand, either upstairs or downstairs. But that's enough threats, man. You can have a limited game. It's how you use it. And if you're going to get the guy reacting to you, and you can mix up those 4 or 5 core techniques, out of both stances, by the way, a very impressive thing about Sean O'Malley is that he really appears to be like ambidextrous as a boxer. Mm-hmm. Then that's something to keep in mind if you're picking future fights, and something to help you understand when he inevitably loses eventually. But it's nothing to take away from what was a sensational and near flawless performance. Him and Ilia Topuria, as you were saying, these are two what appear to be generationally great fighters that have just announced themselves this year. Which isn't to say that Sean O'Malley couldn't just straight up lose to Merab. I think Merab is another very special fighter, but
Bantamweight's just that division.
His misfortune to be in a division full of really, really tough opponents. But yeah. I do hope. I was heartened when I saw that Ilia Topuria just poured cold water on the idea of fighting O'Malley. I would much rather see O'Malley fight Merab and Sandhagen, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
If he does that, then I think I would be very happy to see him fight Topuria.
Yeah, I think the only argument for the Topuria fight is really that Topuria doesn't have anyone else that anyone cares about to fight. He only has Evloev.
That's true.
Or a somewhat immoral fight against Alexander Volkanovski.
That's true, yeah. Which, to be honest, that's probably what they're going to do, the Volk rematch, in order to give themselves a little time to create another contender.
Yep.
It's a shame. But hey, Topuria is obviously a great fighter with the potential to be an all-time great. Sean O'Malley, too. Just no
denying it now.
Stellar performance. Nothing bad you can say about it. All right. Well, let's take a break there. When we come back, I guess I'll say before we close out, and since we're still relatively early in the show, I will have the first article on my new Substack, which I have chosen to call, because branding, The Finer Points of Face Punching. And you can find that at facepunching.substack.com. Should be an easy URL to remember. I will have a detailed breakdown of Sean O'Malley's performance here as my first article there. That will be subscription only, although you can probably read a little bit of it, and I'll probably post a couple of the GIFs on social media. But I'm also going to have a Steve Urseg breakdown coming out later this week, and I'm going to make that one free. So that'll be a nice little sample to let you decide if you want to pledge to that. A couple people already have, even though I haven't turned payments on yet, and I'm very flattered and humbled by that. And I'm excited to churn out a greater quantity of fight breakdowns. I enjoy doing them, Phil. So,
ooh, I look forward to it.
Facepunching.substack.com. I love you. I appreciate your support. Go there. O'Malley Breakdown. Okay, now let's take a break. When we come back, Dustin Poirier did the damn thing, as we knew he would, after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Dustin Poirier and Benoit Saint-Denis together comprised the co-main event of this UFC 299 card. As I said near the top of the show, there was, I guess, just a feeling. Some of it must have just been fear, as sometimes happens, because Poirier is such a beloved fighter.
Yeah.
People really convinced themselves that Benoit Saint-Denis was going to be a super tough style matchup for him. And I just didn't see it. And even as the first round played out the way it did, and even as Dustin Poirier jumped 9,000 guillotines, I didn't even see it then. People were like, oh my God, it's happening. And I was like, no, the thing I said was going to happen is happening. Saint-Denis, to me, was pushing way too hard a pace, especially given that this was a 5-round co-main event. A thing I'm very glad to see the UFC doing, by the way, for prominent fights. Go for it. More 5-rounders, the better. The moment it started, I was like, Saint-Denis can't keep this up. What's he gonna... He's going to overwhelm Dustin Poirier and beat him in a war? That's never happened. It doesn't happen. Bring a war to Dustin Poirier. Enjoy the fucking counter punches. You're going to get wrecked. And
it has happened, but it was like
long ago. Really.
It was Cub Swanson and the Korean Zombie way back in the mists of time.
Yeah. Since Poirier has been a lightweight, really, he hasn't lost a war. He got one shot at by Michael Johnson. And I guess there was Charles Oliveira and Khabib, both of whom had a massive advantage on the ground to help them. But otherwise, in a striking war, Dustin Poirier has not lost one of those since he's been a lightweight. So we're talking like the last 7-8 years or more. So yeah, I was watching this and I was enjoying it. I wasn't even worried for Dustin Poirier. I love him too, folks. But this was just kind of the fight I expected. It's the one that I actually called perfectly. It was like, he's gonna get in some trouble early, but hey, Dustin Poirier has defense. He's got the Robbie Lawler thing. You just can't overwhelm him that easily. And the harder you try, the more opportunities you give him, the more you gas yourself out. And yeah, he even got away with pulling, as I said, 9,000 guillotines in the fight, which is now like a meme that Dustin Poirier has embraced. Did you?
Yeah, in many ways, I do kind of like it.
Me too.
You can't.
It's part of his charm.
This man is just like, you know what? I fucking love jumping guillotines.
Yeah.
I just love it. I just want to jump guillotines, and it's just like he's out there living his best life in, one of the most vile and costly combat sports in the world. He's just like, you know what? I love this technique. I've never hit it. Maybe I'll never hit it. I'm going to do it as many times as I can.
Oh my God.
I think Eddie over at what was Once Bloody Ever was saying how he'd interviewed Dustin Poirier like before the Khabib fight, and he was like, "You gonna jump the guillotine?" He was like, "Yeah, jumping guillotines." Just like lighting up about how,
dude, literally
how much he loves jumping guillotines.
His corner was begging him. Mike Brown was like, "Dustin, do not pull another guillotine." Apparently, backstage, Mateusz Gamrot just approached Dustin Poirier and said, "Don't jump the guillotine." Guillotine. God damn it. Stop making me pronounce it that way.
It's not me.
I don't know what it is. It's because I respect GSP so much. Yeah.
100%.
And Joe Rogan brought that up in a post-fight interview. He was like, Mike Brown said, "Don't pull a guillotine," and then you did it. And Dustin said, "Yeah, and I'll never stop doing it." He's like, it's such a stupid thing to be stubborn about. But on the other hand, it just kind of explained why Dustin Poirier is so consistently great. It's like what Conor McGregor said about not over-focusing on what your opponent's going to do. Playing your game the way you play it. And the guillotine is baked into the way Dustin Poirier fights. And I will say that...
It's also about, about doing stuff which sparks joy.
That's right.
You can continue to fight if you're... if you're simply enjoying it.
Yeah.
And it's one of the ways in which you're going to lose a war is if the other person can make it miserable on you. Maybe if he's just, doing things that he loves doing, like jumping stupid ass guillotines all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He's just always going to be having fun and mentally ready to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Doesn't matter who tells him not to. He's going to do the guillotine. I just love the fact that he knows it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
He's aware that it's a mistake, and he just refuses to stop. And it's why he will always lose to guys like, part of why he will always lose to somebody like Islam Makhachev or Khabib or Chuck
Yeah,
Norris.
this was not like, afterwards he was like, "Yeah, I need to fight Islam." It was like, Dustin, if you wanted to make the case for fighting Islam, this was not the way to do it.
Yeah. But otherwise, I thought, this is the thing, like, it is genuinely rare in MMA that I have so much faith in a fighter's ability to weather a storm. But that was indeed part of my very confident prediction that Poirier was going to win. I knew he was going to have to weather a storm. And like I said, he's a wonderful heir to Robbie Lawler's action lord throne, because Lawler had the same thing. He often had people... He's a fucking action fighter. He's in there in range and he's going to get in trouble sometimes. He's going to get hit with a big shot fighting all these insane punchers. And we've talked about it so often in this stage of his career that one of the most impressive things he's improved is his defense. He is a solid defensive boxer. And if he has to, he will just use his defense. There were several sequences in this fight where Saint-Denis was uncorking his huge, brutish combinations, and Poirier was just blocking most of the punches.
Mm-hmm.
Shelling up, getting the elbow in the way, even blocking the body shots, and then coming in with these wonderfully tight, crushing counters. And, it was weird. I just did not find myself remotely worried for Poirier at any point in this fight. Even the commentators were like, "Dustin's so tired right now," like 3 minutes into the fight. I was like, is he? He looks fine to me.
It's Dustin Poirier.
I'm not saying he doesn't tire out, but
in fights,
yeah, he does.
By this point, you've seen him in fights. You know that he looks super knackered. He will, if given the space to do it, bend over and put his hands on his knees.
Yep.
And blow out air. And then he will destroy the person that he's fighting against.
Yeah, because his mechanics are good. So, he can... I'm not saying he doesn't get tired, but he can afford to get tired. Whereas a guy like Saint-Denis cannot. Saint-Denis' form was bad when he was fresh. When he got tired, that bad form became a death sentence. He just started to get crushed with shots he didn't see coming and could not react to, even just to brace himself in the exchanges. Didn't matter how tired Poirier got, he was still in much better stead than Saint-Denis because his defense is still there, and he uses his body weight to throw his punches. He doesn't muscle things. So, yeah, He can get as tired as he wants. You remember the Dan Hooker fight? He was so tired in that fight. He still fought 5 insane rounds. Doesn't stop him. So, loved it, man. Loved Dustin Poirier.
Yeah, I think we called this one pretty good. Basically said he was going to be able to still have defense and counterpunch with his back to the fence. In a way that Saint-Denis probably wasn't that ready for. And that if Saint-Denis had his own back to the fence, then he was probably dead. And compared it to the McGregor fight.
Similar.
And true enough.
Similar.
This is a right hook counter off the fence from Poirier. Then they turn and reverse positions, and Poirier kills him instantly.
And they just sleeps him. Yeah, very similar. Hit him with one good shot, pivoted around, and the moment Saint-Denis was the one in the corner, he got killed. Very similar to the McGregor finish. I thought the same thing. Yeah, and Dan Tom for MMA Junkie had an even more specific read than us. We did point out the southpaw thing. You pointed out that Saint-Denis is a very crude idea of a southpaw, and that he has basically only fought orthodox opponents. Dan Tom made the additional read, very correctly, that when opponents have gone to southpaw, even briefly, they have unanimously nailed Saint-Denis with the right hook.
Yep.
And, that was the kill shot.
That's a good call.
Very good call. So yeah. Have faith, people, in Dustin Poirier. I was really offended watching this. I was like, you guys thought this guy was going to beat DP? He's a brute. He's just a brute. Those people just don't beat Dustin Poirier. They will someday when he's truly old.
One day they will, yeah.
But
but we haven't seen anything to indicate that.
No, he looked fantastic in his last fight. It took a really well set up shot to get him out of there. He looked in great form. His technique was sharp. And Gaethje beat him precisely because he did not fight like a brute. People who do get knocked out by Dustin Poirier. That's just the way it is.
Yep.
All right.
I don't know where he goes after this. You can't put him in against Islam. It's just pointless.
Well, it's him. But, it's him or Gaethje seem like the likely choices, and I don't really care to see either of them.
Gaethje at least has earned it. Gaethje, he beat Poirier.
He beat Poirier.
He knocked him out. It's on merit. Just give it to Justin Gaethje. I'm fine with that. Poirier, I don't know. The only person, the only thing I can think is that he fights. What's his face? Fiziev.
Yeah, Fiziev would be good, although Fiziev just lost and injured his knee.
Poirier lost one fight before this.
True. Fiziev got an injury too, right?
Yeah.
He can't fight Gamrot because they're teammates. I mean, maybe he could, but based on the fact that Gamrot was backstage,
I don't like doing that.
Based on the fact that Gamrot was one of the people backstage begging him not to go Gilly, they're probably not going to fight each other. Michael Chandler.
So what, Connor? He's fighting McGregor.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
He's willing that fight into the existence with every ounce of his reality manifesting ability. Michael Chandler has been bursting a vein every night, straining to will that fight into existence.
Jalen Turner will be a cool fight.
Yeah.
Sarukian would be a cool fight. Probably still just out-grapples him like Islam.
I guess is the only other one that would be possible.
Yeah, but I mean, both of those, particularly Turner, that really fits into the one thing I like about Dustin Poirier. I'm sure I wouldn't agree with all Dustin Poirier's positions on things. I was slightly weirded out by his pro-military comments, though. He's very PR friendly, Dustin Poirier. He really doesn't ever.
Yeah.
He's quite polished in the content of his speeches, like GSP, I suppose. But one thing he has that GSP never did, which I really enjoy, is the mean streak comes out. like cynicism of Dustin Poirier, and something I really enjoyed was that when he went over to the side of the cage to say hi to Donald Trump and also Dana White, he looked at Dana White and pointed at him and said, "You want me to fight these young killers, huh?" He was like sort of offended at the way like matchmaking works. And that is how it works. You know, you're Dustin Poirier for long enough, eventually a young guy's going to knock you off. But I just kind of liked that he was like personally offended by the idea that they were trying to like, they were trying to get him by making him fight people that nobody else in his position in the division would want to fight.
I was like when he fought Dan Hooker and he went up to him afterwards and he was like, you're going to smash my face? You were going to smash my face?
Yeah.
And then like, you know, he helped him up and they hugged it out and he
keeps it under control, but the mean streak comes out like Demetrius Johnson. Mm-hmm. Like when Demetrius Johnson whooped John Dodson's ass and then gave him the old good game afterwards. That condescending kind of, I don't know, I just like it. It is also part of his charm that he's a bit of a bastard in a way that I think a savage action fighter has to be.
Yep, I agree.
All right. Well done, Dustin. I always believed in you, and you enabled me a moment to be just vicariously sneer at all the people who doubted us. I knew we could do it, Dustin. We're such a great team. All right. Let's take one more break then. When we come back, Petr Yan back on the winning track against Song Yadong in a very entertaining fight. We're going to talk about that next. I will advise you once again to check out the Patreon if you want to hear a little more about the other fights. Which we also talked about last week in case you missed that. So if you want to see what else we got wrong, you can hear both our preview and our recap on patreon.com/heavyhands. Yan, Song, after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to the show. Petr Yan, Song Yadong. I think it was pretty obvious at the end of this fight that we were right about at least one thing, that Petr Yan was under an immense amount of pressure and badly needed this win for his own mental well-being, because there was a huge, visible sense of relief from Petr Yan when the fight was finished. I thought he did quite well, and I think I knew he was the guy to pick. I just decided to pick Song Yadong because who cares? I'm wrong half the time anyway. But I thought it was quite a solid performance from Yan. A little different, actually, to some of the approaches in his other fights. Particularly, Yan's jab was very much on point in this fight. I really liked the way he used it. What did you think?
For the beginning of this fight, I just found myself thinking, this is kind of the end of Petr Yan. Because, and I was thinking about the way we'd, described him as a technical brawler who'd become sort of less technical and more brawler over time. And then I was, as I said with the Sean O'Malley thing, you find yourself suddenly thinking like, were these fights that he won illusions? Because I thought he was actually looking really bad for the first half of this fight.
Yeah.
Like, genuinely the first half of it. Which I guess, speaks to how impressive it is that he managed to pull it back. Because it is literally at 2 minutes 30 into round 2 before suddenly this tentative, counter-punching, Chito Vera-esque version of Piotr Jan suddenly disappears, and you are seeing like the guy that we were all so excited about again.
Mm-hmm. But even that is not really unusual for Jan, is it? I mean, he has always been a pretty slow starter. Like, I understand the feeling of, are those earlier fights illusions? But we did point out last week, like, he quite possibly lost the first round to Uriah Faber. Like, he's struggled with some pretty crude fighters while in the process of sort of building his reads. And I think the way the latter half of this fight played out, you can see, like, yeah, he was building his defensive reactions. He was getting Song Yadong's timing. And, but I agree. He was definitely losing the first round. He definitely lost it. Like, and he did not go out there balls to the wall aggressive. So it did sort of feel at first like he was just very tentative.
Yeah. I mean, but like, these were really, like, close rounds.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think, they weren't rounds that I would really score for Song. Well, I think that both of them are actually very competitive, rounds 2 and 3.
Yep. I'm going to look at the stats just to get another idea, but go on.
Both of them are really, like, dependent on Jan basically getting a single key takedown.
Yep.
Like, right at the end of them.
Yeah, just to give part of the story, first round.
I'm not even sure if I have, like, because I've just been rewatching round 2. I'm not even sure if Jan wins it in retrospect. Like,
I thought he won round 2 and 3 pretty clearly. Even 3 was.
I thought he did, but then I've just rewatched it and I'm less convinced. He really loses the first half of that round quite convincingly and does not win the second half very convincingly at all. It's really only in the third round that he starts.
Really took over. Yeah.
He starts coming alive.
Even round 3 at the spicy moments, because Song was really determined to just kind of brawl his way back to a lead. It still felt sort of up in the air until Jan got that critical final takedown and started crushing Song with elbows.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, it was a weird one because it felt both. Like, again, I totally expected Jan to win. I was not like by the end of the fight, I was like, yes, he's won those last 2 rounds. He did win those first 2 rounds. Again, I'm not actually sure about that second round in retrospect, but it's a round that if you were Song Yadong's corner, and to their credit, they were, you should expect to lose it.
Yeah.
Because if you can't lose the second half of a round and give up a takedown, doesn't matter whether it's in the scoring criteria, you just, you can't live in fantasy world where fights are scored in a different way, in a more idealistic way than they actually are. But yeah, Jan, I think, as you said, like, keyed in on using the jab to bring reactions out of Song. Mostly got him, like, raising the arms or slipping and then throwing either the body kick or the uppercut. Or weirdly enough, like the wheel kick.
Yeah, you landed a nasty one, actually.
Jabbing to uppercut, a real big thing from Jan in this fight. I think it was actually Ryan Wagner has written some great stuff about this over on his Substack.
Yeah, I'll bring up, since we're on the subject of Ryan Wagner, I've got something else to say there too, but just to emphasize that Piotr Jan's right uppercut was money. Love how he caught that read and continued to set that up. That's the thing with Jan, once he finds a thing that works, he keeps doing it, baby. He does not get bored or distracted when he starts finding something that can crush the opponent. That right uppercut landed hard many times. Just before I say about Ryan and others from the fight site world, all of those guys, we love them, of course. Statistically, it was 22-20, slightly in favor of Jan. In round 1, with 1 takedown for Song Yadong. Round 2 was 41-31 for Jan, with 1 takedown for him. Round 3, 36-35 with 1 takedown, but I think that was the clearest round in which he landed the hardest, most damaging shots. Those ground and pound shots at the very end were round winning strikes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it does emphasize that I did think Jan won the second round. That one wasn't really in doubt for me, even on my rewatch. But the whole fight was close, as we kind of expected it to be. Like, Song Yadong is just like a tight pocket puncher. Like, he's just really dangerous and effective and fast in the range where Jan needs to get his work done. So,
it made me a little bit sad to see Song like this. Because he's got all the like mental and physical toughness and all the athleticism to be, one of these Poiriers or Sean O'Malley's or Jans for that matter.
Yep, but he gets his striking training.
Just that he's so
he gets his striking training at Team Alpha Male.
Much more limited. Yeah,
I honestly do feel like I know he's still only like 26, though. It is. You did just mention Poirier. That guy's had an insanely long career and still looks good, as we were saying last week. But it does sort of give you the feeling that Song is probably not going to be one of those fighters who still looks great into his mid-30s, just because as a 26-year-old, he's in there having these tough fights and losing many of them to other really good elite fighters. So despite his age, I want to say that I do feel like he's probably just not going to get better than this unless he...
Yeah, I mean, he's also at the age where he should be... He should still be soaking up technique and...
He should be showing leaps, and he hasn't really shown any since... And this is something Team Alpha Male has doubtless helped him with, since his wrestling and grappling instincts improved. After the Cody Stamen fight, where he just got out-wrestled and lost because of it. Yes, that was a part of this loss, but nobody has really ever just dominated him with wrestling since then. So that, we know that. Team Alpha Male fighters, they get good wrestling practice. They just learn by experience because the gym is just full of great little wrestlers. But we also know the horror stories as shared by the dearly departed Dr. Patrick Wyman, when he went and watched Paige Van Zant training at Team Alpha Male and witnessed the pad work and the sparring, and it was just like a disorganized mess. There is just no systematic approach to actual boxing in that gym. And anybody who fights there who's ever displayed good boxing, Josh Emmett, Andre Feely, they have worked with striking coaches outside of Team Alpha Male. So Song needs to do that, basically. He needs to get a boxing coach.
I mean, so we're talking Dustin Poirier. 9 years ago, he was in his Yancy Medeiros, just Joseph Duffy, he was just starting that run into becoming the Dustin Poirier that we now see today. That the run of like Faith G. Alvarez Holloway.
Yeah.
Where we finally saw him like as an actually dangerous counterpuncher and defensive fighter. So essentially, Song Yadong has like a year or two to catch up.
To start showing that, and he just hasn't. His striking has been exactly the same for as long as he's been in the UFC. It's not a good sign for a young super athlete. Get a boxing coach, man. We want to see you improve. You clearly have the potential for it, and it's not like he did badly in this fight with Petr Yan. Like he needs a boxing coach.
No. Yeah, I mean, eventually he can fight these guys over and over, and he will beat Petr Yan and people like that because they're much older than him, and he will simply outlast them.
Yeah.
Now, this was close enough that he'll doubtless be able to do that. His career is undoubtedly going to be longer than Petr Yan's unless he picks up some terrible injury.
Yep.
God forbid. But yeah, like it would be amazing to see him like blossom in the way that Poirier did.
Yeah. So I mentioned Mr. Wagner before. I did find this kind of funny. One of the things I watched this one, I only saw the last 3 fights live. I was seeing some friends from out of town, and so I watched this one after the fact, and one of the first things I pointed out, after saying that it was a very exciting fight, and I was happy for Petr Yan to get back in the winning winning side of things, that I kept seeing him get in trouble, and I think it was why he never seemed to have a really firm hold on the initiative of the fight. Because of that fucking long guard thing he does. I do not like that.
Oh, where he's just reaching out to grab.
Yeah, you just backpedal and you just reach out like you try to stiff arm a guy. Ryan and others from the fight side were, after I made these comments, were specifically praising that technique. So just goes to show there's different tastes. People prioritize different things and what they take away from fights. And Ryan was correct, and he pointed out with examples that he was managing to deflect a lot of right hands. I would say that in a fight where when you have been in control of it, it is because you're jabbing, that if you're going to stick your lead hand out, you may as well backpedal and jab. You don't have John Jones arms. So, you can put your fist on Song Yadong's forehead and he can hit you. So I do not like that technique, and I would also argue that he managed to deflect a lot of right hands that were only thrown because he adopted this very passive defense. To me, anytime I've sparred and somebody does that, it is an invitation to chase them. Because the hand that is supposed to be, the lead hand is a barrier to you closing distance on somebody, but it's a dynamic barrier. It's a barrier because of the threat that it might shoot out like a snake and stab you in the face. As a static barrier, what that tells me as your opponent is, oh, you're not going to be throwing your jab. So I can walk up on you. And all I have to worry about is your considerably slower, longer ranged right hand. The shot that takes more to load up, you have to uncoil that one to throw it. The jab, you don't have to uncoil shit to throw it. It just pops out. I do not like that as a part of Pyotr game. And I pointed that out in particular because I actually thought this was quite a good defensive performance from Pyotr otherwise. He still does a lot of big, what I would call overreactions to things. But when he's using his high guard, it is dynamic. He reacts. He will adjust. He'll turn his body. He'll change levels. He doesn't just stand there and shell up like Chito Vera did. And when he does that long guard thing, that is Pyotr Jan's version of a see if you can hit me defense. And I never like that kind of defense. No defense should be an invitation to test it. So I wish he would get rid of that, especially because this was such a great jabbing performance from him. And if you're going to stick your lead hand out, just poke the guy with it. Actually,
I tend to agree.
Punish him for chasing
your old boomer take.
Boomers love
especially
jabs.
because there's a point in round 3 that I've just had running where Song just jabs him for like a solid minute straight, whilst Jan just circles holding his left hand out for no reason.
It doesn't actually stop someone. It's worse. It doesn't. Not only does it not stop you from closing the distance because he's got short little arms, it invites you to throw because it tells you that his jab is not something to worry about. You could mix that up with a jab, use it as like a rangefinder, and when you feel them, then you retract halfway and throw just a half arm jab. Another beautiful thing about the jab is that you don't even doesn't have to start from your chin to be effective. Because it's quick, it's there. It irritates you and it makes you nervous. But just holding it out and hopping away, I really do not like that as a defensive call from Pyotr Jan. I think it got him into more trouble than it helped him get out of in this fight in particular.
Yep.
All due respect to Ryan Wagner, who obviously is a fantastic analyst, and he likes Muay Thai, and people in Muay Thai do that shit all the time, but I don't like it. Anyway, it was nice to see Pyotr Jan win. Now that I've seen him thoroughly humbled, I was able to really enjoy his return to success, and hopefully it means we'll see a rejuvenated Pyotr Jan in his next fight with less pressure on his shoulders. Because I gotta think that affected his performance. He really, he just has not been having a good time these last couple years, and I think that's been clear. He has hated what's been happening to him in the cage, so hopefully that was a nice relief for him.
I like seeing him and Song Yadong like really getting on as well.
Yeah, they were
like,
cool after the
each
fight.
Other and
yeah,
hanging out for photos afterwards.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, that isn't something I would have. Obviously, Jan wouldn't have done it if he'd lost because he would have been incredibly mad.
You're right. Shows Song Yadong's character that him losing, he can
it
still be
shows Song
buddy.
Yadong's character, but also I don't even think Jan wouldn't even have done that if he'd won. I think
previously
in the past, he would have just been like, "Get out of here, loser."
I think he's been humbled, man. Like, how could he not be?
Yeah,
it's been a miserable couple of years for him. So, yeah, it was nice.
Time for that figure 8 fight.
Hey, I'm not opposed to that. Are you?
We can put it second on a card after whoever Senior Rosenstrike's fighting next.
Yeah, we can put it second on a card after Sergey Spivak versus Rebellis Despain.
Senior Rosenstrike, they've never fought. Or have they?
Probably not. Maybe. It's impossible to know. We were looking ahead at next week's card. Tuivasa versus Tybura. Ugh. And you were convinced, even after I corrected you, that they have fought before. Who can remember these goddamn awful heavyweight fights?
I'm still not convinced that reality isn't just lying.
Okay. That will do it for this week's episode of Heavy Hands. I will admonish you one last time to go check out the Heavy Hands Patreon. We talked about all the other notable fights, more or less, that were not covered on this main episode. And I will, well, I'm not too proud. I'll beg you to check out facepunching.substack.com. Subscribe over there. Support me if you want to read my breakdowns on awesome performances like the one Sean O'Malley put on last weekend. And if you're not quite sure if that's worth it for you, then you will get to read a nice breakdown of Steve Erceg's solid win and beautiful knockout over Matt Schnell from last weekend. So facepunching.substack.com and patreon.com/heavyhands. We really appreciate all your support. And that's it. Find us on Twitter at Yuva Greg Jackson. That's Phil. At Boxing Bush. That's me. And until next week, when, by God, hopefully something interesting happens on the Tuivasa Tybura card, so we could talk about it. Until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands. That's good. Hit the mic. Hit the mic. Hit the mic stand while doing my outro.
Francis Ngannou was knocked out by Anthony Joshua.
Oh, yeah. Maybe we can talk about that next week in a little more detail, because we're going to have precious little else to discuss.
I can't believe you're not going to be thrilled to discuss Marcin Tybura suddenly having suddenly pulling out a incredibly subtle offensive boxing game, but then in turn being stymied by the newfound wrestling of Ooey Man. I've forgotten his name already. It was like minutes ago. I don't care.